I'm going to ask who got flooded here this year, and I'm asking knowing that your ward was the ward with the lowest amount of flooding in the entire city. So I don't expect many hands to go up, but I think I saw a couple, right? And I'm on that list, one in the back as well, Corinne, myself included. So I know this was a bad situation. I know how it feels. I know what it's like, especially last year when you all really got hit hard here as well. Twice, two of these 1 in 100 year storms in 1 year. It's a difficult situation. I get it, and it's uncomfortable. Every time the sky turns dark and you're off to work or you're off to wherever you have to go, you're probably thinking, maybe I shouldn't go, maybe I should stay home and watch the basement. So it's uncomfortable. And I want to start off, I'm not going to take a long time tonight, but I want to start off, and I just want you to take a snapshot with your brain of that picture on the screen. Just look at that picture because it's going to come up and it's going to be important a little bit later in the presentation. So, is the city of Windsor, is it climate change that we're experiencing, or do we just have darn bad luck in the city of Windsor? That's the million-dollar question. So I don't know what the answer is, but I can tell you 2 1 in 100 year storms in 1 year certainly is concerning to us. The top left of your screen, what you see is what happened in Houston. The hurricane in the middle, of course, is Irma. The top right of your screen is a multi-billion-dollar flood that happened in Calgary in 2013. The bottom left is Toronto Island, which was closed for most of this summer because of flooding. And the bottom right is Ottawa-Gatineau. Earlier this year, they had a major flood in that area, and they were added to the state of emergency was declared, and they were added to the disaster recovery relief program. What happened here in Windsor? We had about 220 millimeters of rain in the worst area in a fairly short period of time, in about 7 hours. And the net effect, what happened last year, about 3,100 basements flooded citywide, more than double happened this year. So we were, as of this morning at about 9 o'clock, 6,640 calls to 311 for flooded basements. Flooding just didn't happen in Windsor this time. It happened in LaSalle, it happened in McGregor, it happened in Lakeshore, Orchard Park. If you have any friends out in Orchard Park, was just completely demolished with the rain, and of course in Tecumseh as well. Damage estimates to now total around $175 million from this storm and are growing every single day. The province I didn't declare a state of emergency, but the province added us to the Disaster Recovery Assistance Program for Ontarians. You don't have to declare a state of emergency to get on that list. They send their own monitors down, they evaluate the situation, and they decide whether to add you to that list. They did add us to that list again this year, like they did last year. And to sum it all up, this was the largest recorded flood in our city's history. The largest recorded flood in our city's history. When you call 311 to make your complaints for flooding or anything else, people say sometimes, Drew, why bother calling 311? What are they going to do with that information? We do track all the information, and it's very helpful for our staff, the engineering team, and the garbage collection team, and many others who are trying to determine where to allocate resources when we're looking at major problems. So you can see here that this flood basically just started over South Windsor and went right over Riverside, skipping most of you here in Forest Glade, and a lot of Riverside was just heavily, heavily damaged. And the problem was, what happened is folks who got flooded last year made insurance claims, they were paid out by their insurer, and then they couldn't get insurance coverage again. Or if they did, many of them were capped at around $2,000 of coverage. And I think those of you who've had a flood in the past recognize that $2,000 in coverage probably doesn't even remove the wet carpet. If you're hiring a restoration company, doesn't even remove the wet carpet from your basement. So it left a lot of people sort of, for lack of a better term, high and dry. They had nowhere else to go. So, how much are we spending on sewers in Windsor? And tonight I want to be really honest with you and tell you the facts. This is what this presentation is all about, and call out some of the things that I've heard in the community, that I've seen online on social media, and people have mentioned to me through friends and family. And one of the things that I heard is, well, you guys aren't spending enough on sewers. You must be neglecting the sewer system. Here's the reality of the situation. Since 2001, the city of Windsor has spent nearly $500 million on our sewer system. Between 2001 and 2008, we spent $122 million on our sewer system. Then folks said, well, Drew Dilkens, You are holding the line on taxes, and you did that for a while, and you must have been starving the system. You're not investing. Collect more taxes and invest it in the system so we don't flood. And I said, well, you'll be happy to know between 2009 and 2016, we spent $273 million on our sewer system. That was the time when we were holding the line on taxes. We more than doubled the amount that we were spending on our sewer system. Just a few months ago now, in July of this year, City Council approved an additional $12 million. And part of that $12 million was to fund several projects. I won't name them all, but one of them was to help expedite the sewer master plan that we're working on. And part of that sewer master plan is putting a camera through every foot of the sewer in the city. And I'll explain that a little more. We also looked at the Mount Carmel sewer, the Lennon drain. We reviewed the Pontiac, and we are reviewing the Pontiac and St. Paul pumping stations. And so all of these things are really important, and we're spending money on that. And those, any accountants in the room? Anyone good with a calculator or a checkbook? You're probably sitting there saying, well, Drew, you said you spent $500 million, but 122 plus 273 plus 12 doesn't get me to $500 million. And you're right, because what we don't include in that $500 million on the screen here is when we do road projects where we replace the sewer as a function of the road project. So if you look at Cabana Road today, and you're driving on Cabana Road, it's a $50 million project. We're replacing the sewer. The sewer is $8.6 million of that $50 million project. That's not included in these numbers. We'd have to add that $8.6 million in. So when you add all those road projects where we replace the sewers, then you get to almost $500 million. And by the way, the Cabana project, as an example, was part of an amalgamated area, Sandwich West. And so what we're doing when we replace the sewers there, we're actually replacing them with city-sized sewers, the standard that we have in the city, which is larger than what they used to have in the old municipality that amalgamated with us in 1966. So we are increasing the capacity as we go ahead and do that work. So, Drew and City Council, you guys spent all this money and we still flooded in the city of Windsor. And the sad truth here is that there's no sewer system in Canada and no sewer system in the United States that could have handled the volume of water that we received in that short period of time. And that goes for both this last storm and the storm we had just a year ago. So in the city, and what you need to know, and I think it's important people understand this, is that we have our system, our sewer system, is really comprised of 6 separate systems. And you can appreciate that Sandwich, until 1935, when it amalgamated with Windsor and Walkerville the same year, they had their own sewer system. Downtown has a separate system. The East Side has a separate system. Riverside had a separate system. So there are 6 separate systems under our feet as we speak. The value of replacing that system, if we want to do it, will cost you and I $3 billion. That's the book value of the sewers that we have, $3 billion worth of sewers. How much sewer do we have under the city of Windsor? Almost 1,800 kilometers of sewer, both sanitary and storm sewer, that run under all of our homes. Now the sanitary side is interlinked. So if you flush the toilet here at Forest Glade Arena, it's going to the Little River Treatment Plant, will be treated and discharged back to the river. If you're on the west side of the city, that goes to the Lou Romano pumping station, gets treated, back to the river. Those systems are interlinked and they function quite well when they're not overloaded. The storm systems are not always interlinked and they function in different ways. So here on the east side, you'll see more, because we're newer out here, you'll see more retention ponds, like Blue Heron. You'll see those kind of things, and developers now are responsible for handling their own stormwater, which is not something that used to exist even 50 years ago. And so on the storm side, you have water that flows in different ways. It's moving in the system. Some are connected, some are pump driven and pumped out to the river. Some are gravity fed, some go to places like Blue Heron. So you have a number of different systems that function, and they function in different ways. And so what are we going to do to try and address the problem that we've seen twice in the last year? We're seeing what I believe to be some elements of climate change. We certainly need to become more resilient, and we're not alone. This goes for every community in Canada and every community in the United States as well, and probably every community globally. So the long-term view, something that Councilor Kuzmierczuk mentioned, was the sewer master plan. And we started this sewer master plan several years ago, and you're saying, boy, you guys do all these studies and it takes a long time to complete all these studies. And this one is exceptional because of the volume of work, or the amount of work that has to happen, including putting cameras through 1,800 kilometers of sewer, doing flow monitoring at many junctions in the sewer system. So we have to wait for heavy rain events or any rain event to determine what the flow is and how the water is moving. Because believe it or not, we have maps of the sewer system, but they're not great maps of all of the interconnected systems that we amalgamated from 1935 and 1966. In fact, if you go to Walkerville today, there are pipes that likely Hiram Walker touched when he built the first sewer system in our area that are still functioning just fine. And if we wanted to replace sewers, we wouldn't go there first because they're still doing well. We would go and change some of the sewers that are combined sewers. You know, up until the 1970s, we were still doing combined sewers. That was the standard. If you ask my 13-year-old son today, does it make sense to you if we have combined sewers where dirty water and stormwater go? He'd say, well, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But that was the standard of the day, so we would change different things first. So we're doing this sewer master plan, and it's very data intensive, it's very resource intensive, and we'll be done it. The good news is we'll be done it next year. And we've helped put more money towards it through that $12 million amount that I talked about in July, to help expedite all of the pieces that we could do faster. A number of the steps are sequential, so we can't just throw more money at it and hope to get it done faster. There is a sequence to it, and we're doing everything that we can. Some of you out here will have seen smoke and dye testing happening, and what we're doing is we put smoke and we put dye in the system and find out if there's breaks in the system, find out if there's cross connections, to make sure that the water that's supposed to be going in the right sewer is in fact going in the right sewer. So the purpose and the point of the long-term of the sewer master plan is to inform those long-term decisions, those really expensive decisions that we have to make. And we'll have this plan done next year, but some of the recommendations that flow from this plan, they can range from $60 million to $100 million or more. If we're talking about adding additional pump capacity, if we're talking about building more ponds, probably larger than the size of Blue Heron, you have to find the land, you have to build it, and they're very expensive. And those of you who use the waterfront, you'll recall just a few years ago we installed a retention treatment basin, which you ride your bike over or walk over now, closer to the casino area, and that was a $60 million project. And so it's not a matter of not having the money, it's not a matter of not wanting to spend the money, it's not a matter of neglect, it's a matter of getting the long-term plan back in front of City Council, because none of us are engineers. So we need to have the best data to decide how to spend those $60 million, how to spend $60 million or $100 million. And when I talk about 6 separate sewer systems in the city, it becomes more important because guess what? If I put a Blue Heron pond out here and it rains like it did in South Windsor, I've done nothing to help the people in South Windsor. So we need the best data possible, or vice versa, right? And we need the best data possible to make sure that we're spending this money and putting these solutions in the right place to serve all of you. And when we talk about long-term, it's going to take us another year to get the sewer master plan back. We'll have it back by this time next year. And then to actually implement some of those solutions, probably 2 to 3 years by the time we do the engineering, get the money, and actually build the solution. So we're looking at 3.5 to 4 years for some of these expensive solutions. So the question is, what do I do in the meantime? What can I do to protect my home in the meantime? And I know many of you have already stepped forward and done some of these things. But this is where I came up with the 8-point plan. And there's some solutions here that you'll probably say, well, yeah, those make sense. And some you'll say, aren't you doing that already? Like this one, where you say, consult more closely with the Tecumseh and LaSalle and our neighbors who we provide clean water to and take dirty water from to treat. Talk with them and make sure that all of our development plans are coordinated, that we know exactly what's going to be discharged or how much is going to be discharged in the sewer system. And when we talk about inflow and infiltration numbers, we do a lot of this already, but when we talk about inflow and infiltration numbers, that's where we kind of are weak. So we're going to strengthen the relationships that we have with our neighbors to make sure we know exactly how much could end up in the sewer. If you leave here with nothing else today from this presentation, please leave with this slide in mind. And this is the Basement Flooding Subsidy Protection Program. This is the program where the City Council has now, just a few weeks ago, increased the funding amount from 80% to 100%. So effectively, we're going to pay 100% up to $2,800 for the installation of a backflow valve and a sump pump at your house. And you just have to get on the list. And it's going to take some time, because ever since the flood last month, guess what? Everyone's calling. I do these presentations. This is the 5th or 6th time now, 5th or 6th ward. Everyone goes home and says, oh, it's free. I'm going to call and put my name on the list. And that's good. We want you to do that. but it'll take a little time to go through the process now, where we're trying to expedite that with our fast track option as quickly as possible. So we will pay up to $2,800 for the installation of these devices, and they give you the best fighting chance we have in the short term. I know some folks that walked in I was talking to at the door while Councillor Kuzmierczak was doing his presentation, and the question was, did you flood? And the response from the gentleman was, no, I did everything you said I should do last year. And so that's a good sign. Now, backflow valves and sump pumps, I'm going to tell you right now, they're not 100% effective 100% of the time for 100% of the people. They have to be maintained. And some people, like when you're changing your furnace filter, you got to go down and maintain that little backflow valve for 2 minutes and make sure it's functioning properly. Some people forget to do that, and then it sticks. In the storm, you're out, the little latch is sticking, and you might get flooded. So there's work to this a little bit, but it's not onerous work for the average person. Now, I'm going to address this concern too, because some people said, well, Dilkens, guess what? You were funding 80% of the program up to $2,800. And now you just did some funny math and you said, we're going to fund 100% of the program, but we left the amount at $2,800. What are you guys doing? You're playing funny things. You're trying to fool us at City Hall. The reason we chose and left the number at $2,800 is because we've already paid out 4,500 claims. 4,500 of you and your neighbors have taken advantage of this program at the 80% level, and we've made those payouts. And so the average claim at 80% was just over $2,000, and when we extrapolated that, had we paid out 100%, it brought us to $2,500 and change. So it still left about $250 room in that program to fund additional claims. So 7% of the population in Windsor has taken advantage of this, and we use the best data from that program that we had to inform whether or not we should increase the amount. And we know if we increase it to $3,000 or $3,500 or $4,000 that many contractors will play to the ceiling. So we have to be alert to that too, but we felt there was still room in the program. So please, the forms are online. If you prefer to do it online, the packages are also up here. We'll pay up to $2,800, and I encourage you to do it. And God forbid, you're the person on the block who decides not to do this, and all of your neighbors have, and there's a heavy storm, and their backflow valves go down, and you're the house that's exposed. You want to see a geyser? You'll see a geyser coming up from the floor drain. So please, look at this seriously. We just put $7.2 million more into the program to fund almost an additional 3,000 more homes. And I know we're going to get to that subscription level very quickly. We'll have to add more money, and we will find it. We're looking at adding weeping tile disconnection to the program. So this is something they do in the City of London. It's expensive. It's about $3,800 per home, and it may make sense in some areas of the city depending on age and depending on, you have homes in South Windsor where I live where basically every street was the same builder and they were putting up sort of cookie cutter homes. And so there are some areas like that where this may be more applicable. The city engineer is looking if that makes sense in certain areas and whether we can add that to the program. We also looked at what LaSalle did and what they do. They offer sewage ejection pumps, and these are about $4,000 each. But what they do is they hydraulically separate your sanitary system. So they're power operated, so it's not good if the power goes out and you decide to take a shower. But if everything's working normally, and there's a storm where the sewer's backing up, you're going to be fine here on the sanitary side because you've hydraulically separated from the system. So we're looking at that as well for certain areas of the city. Mandatory downspout disconnection. Has anyone here taken advantage of the voluntary downspout disconnection that we have? We do it for free. So if you call 311 and say, I have downspouts that go into the ground on the side of my house, we will send the team out, person will come out, they will cut them off, they will cap it nicely at the base, and they will direct the water away from your house. And so this is really neighbors helping neighbors, because the more water that goes into the sewer system during heavy rainstorms, the more it affects everyone else who's downstream on that same system, and upstream, frankly, if it starts backing up. So it's voluntary now. Only about 3,800 people have taken advantage of voluntary downspout disconnection, right?
About that, yeah.
About 3,800 people, so maybe about 6% of the population has taken advantage of it. It's free, it doesn't cost you anything. And I should tell you, we're not looking at creating a worse situation. So at some homes, you may have a downspout that goes in right next to your driveway or your sidewalk that comes out. We're not looking to disconnect every single one and then put something out into your driveway that's going to have you trip over it. Or we're looking at doing what we can do in a reasonable way, and we're looking at making it mandatory because this is one of the ways that we can each help each other in a high-intensity rainstorm. Riverside Vista project. Remember the home in the picture at the very beginning of the slide? That was Riverside Drive. That was right off Riverside Drive. In fact, the lady came to the ward meeting a couple nights ago in Ward 2, and she says, hey, that's my house. And so Councillor Geniak had sent me this picture the day of the storm, and the water was literally overland water rising up. She opened her front door, and it just came right in the front door. Welcome. Came right in the front door, and she couldn't stop it. And so this has been an issue. The Riverside Drive between St. Rose and Ford Boulevard has been an issue. We know that it's very difficult for us to control the water there. Again, it goes back to sort of pre-1966 with the Riverside Standard in that area where they didn't have curbs and gutters. So there's no way to manage a lot of the water that's coming off those side streets onto Riverside Drive. So this is going to be one of the priority projects that City Council can consider. Accelerating, we talked about accelerating the sewer master plan, 6 separate systems. We're working on doing everything we can faster to get that report back quicker next year so we can make decisions. And then the last thing really falls into the province. The province has that program, the Disaster Recovery Assistance Program. It's a program that serves people well if they're low income, but it excludes, unless you're low income, it excludes those who've had sewer backup. So the vast majority of people who apply get a thanks for applying, sorry you don't qualify letter back. Unless you've had water penetration through vents, through foundation blocks, and things like that, other sources of water penetration, you generally don't qualify for this program. So I've said to the Premier, we need to change this program. You need to change this program. I have no power to change it. You need to change this program because there are people in Windsor, and I'm sure in Ottawa, Gatineau, and Toronto as well, who are left behind, who have tried to buy insurance and they can't. So what can the provincial government do to offer insurance to people who really have no other choice? And that's what we're trying to get the provincial government to do, to make those changes so no one gets left behind. So the message here is we have to do this together. And I want everyone to leave here knowing that for years, literally, we're in the 4th year working on that sewer master plan. We're expediting everything we can to get that back. Probably mid next year, we'll have it back and can make those decisions. And they're expensive decisions. In the meantime, we've got solutions in the short term that offer you some safety, some comfort, and we're willing to fund them, and it's your money. We're collecting your money, and we're willing to give you your money back to help fund this program so that people have a fighting chance. And it's not a matter of if we get another one of these storms, it's really just a matter of when. And so we need to be prepared and we need to work together. And when I say other ideas for property, some people just need to look at, every property is different. Some people need to look at grading of the property. Some people need to look at caulking and sealing some of the foundation blocks and sort of just general maintenance of the house. I don't need to tell you that, but there are some little things that we can do to give ourselves even a better chance of not flooding. But the point here is we have to do this together. We're in the middle of climate change, and Hiram Walker and the folks who are city engineers who are building sewers, it's their 125th birthday this year, folks. When they were putting sewers underground 125 years ago, they weren't thinking of 220 millimeters of rain in 7 hours. They just weren't. And so we're trying to get the fixes in. We're trying to do the long term, trying to help you with the short term. We're going to do this together. And I'm here all night. So if you have any questions about this or anything else, I'll be over here and happy to talk to you about any issue of importance to you. Thank you very much for coming tonight.